And we start in Kenya, where President Uhuru Kenyatta has lashed out at members of parliament. He's called on them to drop their threat to pass a law giving them higher salaries. The country's Salaries and Remunerations Commission slashed public officials' wages in a bid to bring equity to the public sector and reduce the burden on Kenyan taxpayers. President Kenyatta has warned members of parliament to, quote, be careful because that is the reason why many members of parliament lost their seats in the election, end quote. He's also vowed not to sign that into law. Kenyatta has reminded members of parliament that the government is there to serve the people, not earn from them. He's called their attempts to get higher salaries greedy and shameful. Kenyan members of parliament are some of the highest paid in Africa.
We need to recognize that those like yourselves and myself and others who are called to serve, we are not masters, but rather we are servants of the people. We are here to serve our people. And in that respect, all of us, from myself as president, to the teacher, to the policeman, we have to have a system that recognizes and pays us in accordance with that which we do. And there cannot be a class of citizens in Kenya who believe that they are servants more than all of you sitting here.
Well, CGTN's Robert Nagila has been following that story for us. He's joining me now here in studio. Robert, quite a strong statement there from President Kenyatta. So clearly it's a very big issue for Kenyans at large. Why is the president digging his heels in?
Well, Beatrice, it was a very strong rebuke from the president. In fact, the strongest from this president in the last 5 years, targeting the legislators for a number of reasons. One, we've seen this Parliament, every time they're sworn in, the first order of business is to raise their salaries. Now, this time around, as the president made very clear, in between June and July this year, just before the election, the Salaries Commission looked into the salaries for the legislators and the presidency as well, and said, listen, as far as we're concerned, in regards to the economy, the salaries are just too high, and Kenyans had been complaining for a very long time. So they looked at the scale, reduced those salaries, and the president made it very clear that they all knew before they were elected that this was going to be the new scale. So why come in and ask for a new pay scale at this particular moment?
So Kenyan members of parliament are already some of the highest paid on the continent, if not the highest paid on the continent. The members of parliament are being asked or being compelled to take pay cuts. What will the money that will be saved be used upon? Well,
first of all, Beatrice, in comparison to GDP, Kenyan members of parliament are some of the highest, if not the highest, paid in the world. Now, they earn about $6,000 a month. That is minus the allowances which were scraped. On average, the average Kenyan would probably take home about $60 a month. And that's why this public anger was overflowing, and the president was simply amplifying it. In terms of what it's going to be used, we're talking about millions of dollars being saved every single month. Now, this, we're told, will be distributed towards different departments within government, education, health sectors, which badly need those resources at this particular moment.
Right. Robert, do stay with us because we want to find out exactly how it's done across the rest of the continent. And let's bring in CGTN's Deji Badmus now in Lagos for more on how Nigeria's parliament works. Deji, how does it work in Nigeria? How much do Nigerian MPs earn?
Well, Beatrice, it's difficult to tell you how much Nigerian lawmakers earn. It has always been shrouded in mystery for a very long time. But something happened this year. For the very first time, the lawmakers in this country decided to open their budget. But opening their budget is actually not opening their salary. So now we have a fair idea of how much, for instance, I mean, what the lawmakers actually do with their budget. You look at the budget this year, what is actually budgeted to the lawmakers this year is in the region of $347 million. Now, the bulk of the money, when you look at their basic salaries, I mean, the basic salary is very low. Typically, like the Speaker of Parliament not quite long ago released his pay slip, he collects somewhere, in terms of basic now, Beatrice, somewhere around $700 to $800. But look, it's in the allowances that you have everything. The allowances quite huge, and it's one of the reasons why it's a general perception and general knowledge that Nigerian lawmakers, apart from Kenyan lawmakers, are among the highest paid in the world. But it's difficult for us to sit down here and tell you this is how much they earn, whether it's $7,000, $10,000 per month, but it's quite high. And the money is parked in the allowances. They call it overhead. That is where you have all the monies coming to the lawmakers. You have hardship allowances, sitting allowances, housing allowances, and they are really huge indeed. So it's always a debate here, but you know, it will still continue. And of course, people are mounting pressure on the lawmakers to cut down on their earnings.
Right, so Nigeria and Kenya legislators, some of the highest paid on the continent. Let's widen the debate even further now, and I'm joined live from Johannesburg by Sumitra Naidu. Sumitra, same question to you though. How much are members of parliament paid in South Africa?
Well, in terms of the ranking, the lowest members of parliament earn in the region of 1 million rand. That's about $70,000 That goes up depending on positions held. The leader of the opposition takes home about 1.5 million rand. Ministers will earn in the region of 2.3 million rand. The Speaker of the National Assembly will earn 2.72 million rand this year, which is the same as the Deputy President. And the President, if his package is approved for this year, will take home just under 2.9 million rand. If you look at the average earning in South Africa, it's about 140,000 rand a year. MPs make more or less the same in a month.
Right. Robert, obviously this debate is going on across the continent as to exactly how much importance is attached to MP salaries versus the GDP of countries. So Kenyan members of parliament, of course, as you mentioned earlier, remain some of the highest paid there. Who is the public likely to support in this instance, the president's sentiment or the MPs?
Well, this whole debate broke out yesterday. And what the president was doing today was simply amplifying the public mood, using some very strong language, shameless, greedy. He's never done that before. And a lot of people actually believe that, and as he said, if he goes through the Supreme Court and everything is okay and he's sworn in, he will stick to his stand. A lot of people believe that we are going to see a very different Uhuru Kenyatta in his second term because it's about his legacy. So he was simply amplifying the public mood, sticking to his ground, and he's received a lot of support from Kenyans across the board, on social media especially. And we also saw the opposition come out almost an hour after the president made that speech, saying that they did not concur with some of their members of parliament who wanted a pay hike, saying that at this particular time and place, Kenya can simply not afford it. And remember, this is not just the members of parliament who've taken a pay cut. It's the president, the deputy president, the speaker, members of the judiciary. So it's across the board. Now, the problem with this, especially we've seen this in the last two parliaments, once they get a pay hike, there's a ripple effect. Civil service, teachers, doctors, everybody wants one. So this is also another way to tell everybody, like, look, it's not business as usual. This is a new beginning, and everybody's got to stay within the line.
Right, a new beginning there for Kenya. Deji, to you though, Nigeria's president has also been on an austerity drive. Just how much of an issue is parliamentary salaries for Nigerians?
To be candid, it's a very big issue in this country, very big issue, and it's currently being debated. As a matter of fact, as we speak today, there are quite a number of people who feel that the country should go the way of Senegal. I mean, scrap one of the houses of parliament, because, I mean, just look at it. In the House of Representatives alone, you have 360 lawmakers, and then in the Senate you have 109 senators. So taking care of this number, this huge number of people, is actually not easy. And then you consider the fact that basically what they do is basically the same. It's what you have, what they do in the House of Representatives is what they actually do in the Senate. So people are actually pushing for the scrapping of one of the houses, probably the Senate, and that we should concentrate on the House of Representatives. And the reason people are pushing for this is just because the amount of money that this country is spending on parliamentarians is quite huge. For a very long time, it was around 150 billion. President Buhari decided to cut it down to 115 billion, but then the lawmakers jacked it up when they passed the budget. They jacked it up to 125. So it's really huge. It's a big issue. But now how everything is going to pan out is difficult to see, because at the end of the day, it's the lawmakers who make the law. And if you have to scrap one of the houses of parliament, it will be up to the lawmakers now to take that decision. Now, do we see that happening? If you ask me, I would say very difficult.
Very difficult for Nigeria. Sumitra, to you though, what steps is South Africa's government now taking to reduce the debt burden on public sector salaries? We've heard that it costs Kenya about half its government revenue. What's the damage for South Africa?
Well, it's massive, Beatrice. Government's wage bill is sitting at just over $50 billion. On the 2015 figures, there was about a $3 million increase in salaries. A proposal was put forward to freeze salary increments for this year. It's yet to be passed, but that's a saving on a 6% increase on salaries. But the president might look at a living wage increase of 4%, so salaries are expected to go up this year. But this wage bill, as it stands, is massive. The government remains the largest employer in the country. Last year, it did freeze all of the new positions to keep costs down. The ratings agencies have also warned that this growing wage bill is dangerous, especially since the economy is so weak and growth is minimal.
All right, Sumitra Naidu for us there in Johannesburg, and Deji Badmus joining us from Lagos. To you both, thank you. And Robert Nagila, of course, here in studio. Thank you for your insight on Kenya.